Aunt's boots. After my grandmother died, the family suggested, and my grandfather acquiesced to, a general cleaning and clearing out of the old home. Going through the room that my aunt, the youngest of the children, had once possessed, a pair of her boots was found. "I remember these," my aunt declared. They were turquoise vinyl with tall heels. They laced up in the front. The eye holes were white, the laces were a muddy orange color. "God, they're hideous," my mother pronounced judgment. They went into the pile of stuff destined for donation to charity. I liked them, however. They looked to me as if they were part of some early 70s superhero's costume. I liberated them from their thrift store-bound doom and took them home. I wanted to take the framed print of Venice at night that had hung in the dining room since before I was born, but that wasn't being removed. Now, of course, I knew the boots wouldn't fit my feet, but I decided to try them on anyway, in the privacy of my room, of course. I worked my toes down to the sole and pulled the laces as tight as I dared. I was essentially standing on my tiptoes inside the boots. They looked cool. If I had been wearing some complimentary costume like bell-bottom jeans and a pink bowling shirt, it would have been perfect. As it was, I had on running shirts and a t-shirt. This proved unfortunate, for when the magic powers from the boots began to emanate through my body, the matrix formed by the conjunction of my male body, the bland outfit, and the boots themselves allowed me only enough superpowers to prance about the room. To leave it would be fatal. When the time came for the adventure to be over, I had to get my sister to pull the boots off. "They belong to Aunt Janet," I explained. "They don't fit me. Do you think you might want them?" "God, no," my sister recoiled. "But how could I tell her that this gaudy footwear had magic powers?" "I think Aunt Janet might have been Planet Girl," I gasped. "The superhero from Saturday morning TV? It sounds crazy, I know, but the world needs a heroine. You could be that heroine." An instant's visible thought. The fat man with the sullen features looked up from his crossword puzzle at the collection of noisy people gathered around the equally noisy television. In the instant before he folded his newspaper and rose awkwardly from his table, one could, if one was watching, easily read the fat man's thoughts. He longed to kill every single one of these people who had disturbed his respite from work. As he ambled out of the room, however, his face assumed its usual expression of walrus-like impassivity towards the unending difficulties of life. In his absence, the good times continued. The television, watched fitfully if at all, remained at airport runway volume, displaying the continuing antics of the football brothers, whose obsession with sports and devout, if confused, belief in Jesus Christ was but an amplified reflection of the crowd of screaming, hooting morons now seated before the screen. Two women, one in a fright wig the color of pumpkin guts, the other in a faded T-shirt commemorating a family reunion 20 years before, cackled and bellowed their way through a conversation while sitting 10 feet apart. "They say he gonna come back and paste it to the wall," said one. "Who say that?" The other needed clarification. "His mama and his Aunt Renee. They say he gonna come back and paste it to the wall." "What wall he gonna paste it to?" "I don't know what wall, Deledra. I guess some wall in his mama's house. So they say he gonna come back and paste it to the wall as soon as he gets back." The next loudest conversation after this one, providing a basso profundo accompaniment to the first's trebly warble, consisted of deep rumbling laughter and humorous accusations of imminent damnation. "The devil's got the pitchfork warmed up for you. Huh. He gonna smoke up your booty. As it say in Isaiah 19:9-17, the smoke obscureth the eyes of God. Yes, sir, the devil's got the pitchfork warmed up for you. Their party of four. "Will these shoes be all right? I don't want to scuff the decks," Anna asked Stefan as she and her husband Roy entered Stefan and Melba's beach house. "You don't have to worry about that," Stefan assured her, smiling heartily and holding a cold glass of something green. "The Blanco Zapato doesn't have decks in the traditional sense of the word. They'll be fine. Roy, how are you? Drink?" Stefan greeted the other man and rattled the ice in his glass at him. "Sure," Roy chuckled in return. Melba called out to Anna from the serving window of the kitchen. "I'll be out in a minute." Anna entered the kitchen anyway. "I'm coming in," she said. Stefan handed Roy a green drink like his own. "Let me show you the Blanco Zapato, Roy." Stefan's face was flushed from sun and liquor both. He was about 45, thin but with a little pot belly. Roy followed his host out to the small dock behind the house. The craft anchored to the dock was not his idea of a boat. "Not what you expected, eh?" Stefan grinned. "No, not at all," said Roy. "What is it?" Stefan downed the remainder of his drink. "It's a new design," he said biliously. "Come on, I'll show you." The Blanco Zapato was shaped much like the command module of the Apollo program flights. It was larger, however, and made of a molded polymer. Stefan opened a hatch on one side and stepped inside. "Come on in," he invited. Once inside, Roy was impressed at the craft's luxurious details. The interior was like the great room of a manor. It was nicer than the living room of the beach house. A catwalk ran around the wall overhead. This was where the instruments and controls were. The cabins were under the floor below water level. "It sleeps 6, but we can accommodate 8. Stefan stumbled over the word accommodate. "We tried to get another couple, the Heaths. I think you know them, but they're out of town." Anna put her head in at the hatch. "Ray, I'm leaving," she announced. As Roy followed her around the side of the house to their car, he begged her to tell him what was wrong. "That bitch got mad. I came in her filthy kitchen," Anna told him. The quality of her husband's blood. As the temperature rose, Mary became more ill-tempered. She was angered to the point of verbally or physically expressing her rage by smaller and smaller incidents, things that in the past she would have either ignored or made a bitter joke about. When her husband came home from work with news that he had struck and killed 2 horses with the car that morning, she stabbed him with a chopstick. Harold staggered back. He pulled the chopstick out from between the 3rd and 4th ribs where it had penetrated and stared at his wife. He longed to take his revenge now, while his fury was running hot, but he knew that the wound was too serious. He began to weep as he went to the phone. He wept from anger, frustration, and the potential loss of this body of his that he had possessed since the dawn of sentience. "If only you'd get the air conditioner fixed." Mary, having nothing better to do now and no other way to go, continued the attack. Harold ignored her. He spoke calmly to the emergency operator, relating the necessary information and requesting an ambulance. He was already hanging up the phone when Mary said, "You don't need an ambulance. I can drive you to the hospital." "No." Harold sat down abruptly in a chair at the kitchen table. "I want them to see the crime scene." "Crime scene?" "I want the full picture to be—" He paused to breathe. It came painfully. "Seen by the police." "The police?" Mary wailed. "Are you nuts?" No, I deserve it." She changed tack, but then, like a weather vane in a tempest, turned again. "Why couldn't you buy a new air conditioner?" Tears spurted from her eyes. She clenched her hands like talons. "I'm going crazy in this house." "The oven's on," Harold announced. She looked at the oven. Its display indicated that the proper temperature for baking a cake had been reached. She picked up the other chopstick and stabbed at the air with it. "The car's totaled," Harold told her. Held them together in the steel. The soup was made of discarded tableware. "But it's so soft on the inside," Bilou purred as he ran his only hand up one of the sleeves. "The lining is a silk and cashmere blend," Orthar explained in his game show announcer's voice. "Doubly organic," Bilou's brother Pan said as he ran his only hand up the garment of the sleeve. "I like that." Orthar smiled with genuine pleasure, with the genuine satisfaction of having given pleasure. He rubbed his fingertips together with a curious motion. It was as if his fingers were cattle, all grazing from the same trough, with the thumbs acting as some kind of walrus-like creatures, pushing the cow's food up to them. Oh, I don't know. It was a confused metaphor when Bilou first described it to me, and it has only gotten more so in the retelling. At any rate, Orthar asked the 2 brothers if they were ready to discover price. Bilou looked at Pan. "What do you think?" he said. "I think so," Pan answered. "How much?" Bilou asked Orthar forthrightly. 37,000. Orthar put the figure out there with as little emotion as possible. He was quick to add, however, "and that includes all the accoutrement that you see here." He gestured towards the array of belts and capes lying on the velvet-covered platform nearby, as well as a lifetime of maintenance and alterations. "Whose lifetime?" Bilou asked. "Ours or the suits?" Orthar chuckled. "Why, the suits? That's a lot of green, Bilou," Pan informed his brother. "Yes, but I don't think we really have a choice." He raised his eyebrows at Pan, asking silently for his final word. The answer came in a twinkling of Pan's eye that only such a close brother could interpret. "The answer is yes," Bilou told Orthar. "Wonderful!" The man clapped his hands together and summoned attendants to help with the brother's fitting. tissue of reassurance. Marcus proffered the box of tissues to Glinka, allowing her to withdraw a tissue with her own fingers. However, though her nose was red and running from weeping, she refused. "I'm not a tissue-type girl," she said. "Very well," Marcus muttered. He twisted about and tossed the box onto the table behind the sofa on which they sat. He turned back to Glinka and watched her continue to cry. "I'm missing that jazz program on the radio I like," he thought. He wondered how long he would have to sit here. It wasn't that he felt no sympathy. He was deeply sympathetic towards the woman. It must be extremely painful to receive such grim news. "Do you want a glass of water?" he was inspired to ask. Glinka shook her head. In fact, she shook her shoulders and upper torso as well. She was hugging herself tightly, hunched over her lap. Marcus sighed, deciding it was time for him to show some of his exasperation with her. "Do you mind if I get one?" he asked. At her muted assent, he rose and went into the kitchen. He found it oddly organized, as he did everyone else's kitchen. By the time he found a glass and put it under the tap, Glinka had joined him. "He was more than just a dog," she explained. "Oh, I'm sure." Marcus had a fear that the water would taste funny. He could smell the laundry from where he stood. One day that smell would penetrate the whole house. Then it would be truly creepy. He could never come there again. On him were founded a cycle of stories that aimed at expressing, well, not just the history of my family, but the human family's interaction with nature as a whole. Do you see? "I guess." Marcus glanced at the curtains over the sink. I've never actually read any of your books." He represented to me, at any rate, how we have anthropomorphized nature, making it hard for us to see it objectively, unemotionally. Marcus wondered what to do with the empty glass. Colonel, the Echo. Forcing their way through the backdrop that served as the northern boundary of their world, the men of our platoon found themselves standing on a ledge overlooking a vast, dark gulf, in the midst of which glowed a dull orange emanation much like that present when the heart of the universe first began to beat. "It's room temperature, Larson," the gambler noted. Captain Fricker, one day to be father to Trent Fricker, the reporter you met earlier, grunted in acknowledgement. He turned to Hopewell, the scientist, and instructed him to set up the sound equipment. As the latter began to do so, Lockfig, the old sergeant, spoke in Fricker's ear. "Right here?" he asked. "Don't you want to move farther down the ledge?" Lockfig pointed to either side. "I can't afford the time, Sarge. Besides, the light coming through the rent is about the only usable light we have. That glow down there isn't going to be of much help after our sun, goes down." Lockfig once again mentally chastised himself for questioning Fricker. He had to admit that the young captain was one smart fella. "The sound thrower is ready, sir," Hopewell reported. "Good. Stand by, everyone." Fricker took the microphone that Hopewell handed him. He summoned up what he wanted to say and said it. "Hello there," he began. His voice boomed into the chasm. "This is Captain Fricker of our platoon. Is Colonel Fradish there?" He waited a couple of seconds, then repeated the words. This time a faint echo was heard. He did not repeat Fricker's words, however, but in Fricker's voice answered, "Fricker, my boy, how are you?" "I'm well, Colonel," Fricker replied. "How are you?" "I have no complaints. I'm disembodied, you see. Colonel, the reason we've come here is to ask you about Operation Mocker." The colonel's answer was drowned in the clamor of howls from the red-eyed ghouls who advanced on the platoon from either side of the ledge. As the soldiers prepared to fight them off, Larson said aloud, "I'd have bet a month's pay there were ghouls in here, but now it's too late." Weak and uncertain. Like most puppets, Bananas was weak and uncertain without the presence of a controlling hand and arm. As he wandered through the History Museum powered by little more than his emergency battery and the nervous energy from a lukewarm espresso drunk earlier that morning, Bananas had no surplus strength to expend on observing the array of artifacts about him. The current exhibit is of artifacts found in the recent dig at Okerton's western wall and items associated with the era in which the wall was constructed, one of the members of the museum's executive board explained to Senator Grumbach. The senator belched intemperately, but with charming indifference. He turned to look at a display of toiletry articles heaped up in a small pyramid, stopping near the bench on which Bananas had collapsed. "All made of stone, are they?" Grumbach asked. "No, Senator, they're wooden," his host and guide corrected him. Didn't know they made things out of wood back then." The senator jerked at the waistband of his pants, easing it back into a comfortable and respectable position. "Well, it was only about 40 years ago that Okerton's first government began construction on the wall," the museum man informed the senator. The latter grunted and prepared to move on. Is that Senator Grumbach?" Bananas called out in a feeble voice. The senator turned back reluctantly, perhaps expecting to see some outraged grandmother intent on accosting him. When he saw the flaccid puppet, he stepped closer. "Bananas," he said, "is that you?" "Senator." Bananas smiled as their eyes met. "How are you?" "Bananas, my old friend." Grumbach loomed over the bench. "What are you doing here?" "Too weak to talk," said the puppet. "Put me on your hand." "Of course, my old friend." The senator scooped Bananas up and inserted his hand, whereupon the puppet animatedly told the senator about the threat to Operation Mocker. To discover a felicity. To discover a felicity is axiomatically a happiness in itself, without starting down an infinite chain of causality and recursion. Let us just leave it at that. Brant Borden was doubly pleased upon first taking up the hobby of metal gardening. "Do these metal plants actually grow?" asked a friend of Borden's mother. "If one is lucky." Borden cocked his head to one side and smiled broadly. "Felicia," the friend said to Borden's mother, "I think Brant is crazy." "He may be crazy," Felicia Borden replied, cocking her head in the same manner as her son, "but he's happy." She did not smile quite as broadly as Brant had, but there was no doubting the delight in the woman's voice. Despite Felicia's friend's doubts as to Brant's sanity, the meticulous care he took with his metal plants betokened an orderly and disciplined mind. One day in June, as Brant was entertaining a guest, he carried on working with his potted subjects as the two men talked. "Do you use the term sculptural botany?" Brant's guest, the amateur poet Hunlick, asked. "Where'd you hear that?" Borden asked, glancing up. "I just call it metal gardening." He used his pliers to adjust the infinitesimal development of an oxidized iron wire adorned with a couple of rusty nuts welded to its shaft. It stood upright in a terracotta pot filled with pale gray soil. "I read it in an article in last month's Sticky. Do you know it? It's a little homemade-looking magazine put out by some people associated with the university. And you've got a poem in it," Borden intuited. "No. They won't give me a chance." "Just as well. You don't want to lose your amateur status. I sometimes wonder what it's worth. If it makes you happy, then it's worth it." "That's debatable." "Say, what kind of soil is that in the pot?" "It's concrete."